Kia ora tātou. My name is Dave Evers, and I'm the manager of business development for the executive and professional development team at the University of Auckland in the business school. I now like to turn it over to my colleague, the director of our executive education, Dr. Rachel Wright.
Thanks, Dave. Eina mana, eina reo, ro rangatira mā, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Welcome to today's information session about our flagship leadership courses. Before we get into the details of our two great courses, I just wanted to tell you a bit about exec and professional development. So we're a unit that sits within the business school at the University of Auckland, and we provide a wide range of exec and professional development courses and programs for individuals, teams, and organizations. For instance, we have in the short course range, everything from emotional intelligence to project management. We work with organizations to customize courses and programs specific to them and their values. So pretty much we can tap into anything across the university and create a program that works for you. We're lucky because we have the best of both worlds. So we're able to take the latest research and thought leadership from our academics and professional teachers in the business school and wider university and combine that with best practice from industry experts. This means that we can provide participants in our program with the latest knowledge and tools. Everything we do has a practical element that can be applied immediately in your jobs. Our focus is to create programs that build the right capabilities needed by New Zealand organisations today and into the future. One of the key things about participating in one of our programs is that you become part of our wider network and ecosystem within the business school and across the university. Quite frankly, one of the most valuable things you'll get from either of these programs that you're going to learn about today is the network, from your cohort to the speakers to the alumni. There will be people that you'll stick with and be friends with for your life. As you can see today, we have advisory board members and alumni from these programs. They are giving up their time because they really see value and really think it's important for as many people to participate in them. So please make use of asking them questions and finding out about what they do and how they add value to the program in your journey. Just congratulations to you for taking the step to be thinking about your leadership journey. Great leadership is needed now more than ever as we navigate these very uncertain times. So please take the time to ask questions. Doesn't matter how big or small they are, and ask from the advisory board members and the alumni, and we're more than happy to answer anything afterwards. All the best with your leadership journey, no matter what you do or whether or not you decide to enroll in a program with us. Dave, back to you.
Thank you very much, Rachel. Okay, so are you seeing my my share, correct? Yeah, so again, my name's Dave Evers, for those who joined late. This is the Leadership Programs webinar. And what we'd like to do today is really give you an overview of our programs, have you our two programs, have you meet two of our advisory group members, alumni, and then we'll have a Q&A. As we're going through the session, feel free to ask questions in the Q&A function as we're going through. We'll either get to them as we're going along. At the end, we have time for questions. But as Rachel said, this is really a great opportunity to ask questions of some senior people that are very engaged with the programs and with professional development as you're thinking about joining the programs this year or in the future. So the programs that we're focusing on today are our Transitioning to C-Suite program and our Leadership Mindset program. So these are leadership journey programs that go over multiple modules that'll be starting. So the Leadership Mindset program is going to start August 11th in a couple weeks, and the Transitioning to the C-Suite program is starting in mid-September. So really now, if you're thinking about doing it, this is a great opportunity now to learn about it, and you can submit your application. We're happy to have a conversation with you after this information session, a personal conversation. Now, we did do webinars on each of these programs that were very specific to the programs, and I'll send you the link to that webinar following this session. So this is not really going to go through the details of the program, but really more of a high level. But that webinar will certainly cover that in addition to all the information that's on the website. So you can see the transitioning to the C-suite program at a very high level starts in September. It's a 5-module program runs through December, 2 days for each module. And this is really about strategic leadership. And you can see module 1 is about leadership and strategy at the executive level. Module 3, so leading organizational change and innovation, and module 5, executive communication. So it's really a senior leadership program. We have 3 in-person sessions and then 2 online sessions, which are really focused on the specialization areas of the CFO, CIO, supply chain, or general management, people leadership. Excuse me, people leadership. And the leadership mindset program, which is a 3-module program, and that is really about very focused on leadership. So basically how we think, how we understand ourselves, potential barriers in dealing with issues that come up and change, and how to build supportive relationships. So this is while the strategic C-suite program or the transitioning to the C-suite program is really designed for mid to senior level managers, strategic leadership moving into the senior leadership level, the C-suite level. This is designed for maybe mid managers, lower level managers in their earlier career, but even also for senior leaders. And it's not just about people management, but also about project management and about understanding yourself and your leadership style. And really, I think going through this program, it's been running for a long time. People are very passionate about it that have gone through it. You'll hear from Ellie, who's gone through the program. But it really, I think, helps you in your professional life as well as in your personal life, and all around is just a really great transformative experience as you go through. So I'd like to jump right into our panel updates and discussions. So I'll just quickly introduce our panel before we move on. So really excited to have some really outstanding panelists today that have been involved with the program. So Angela Dixon, who's on our CFO advisory group. She was until recently a CFO at Sinlet Milk down in the South Island. She's been CFO and information officer at Public Trust and served as the interim CEO for Public Trust. And she's done executive education programs herself at Darden School, which is with the University of Virginia in America. She's done programs with the Global Women's Course and the director and the Institute of Directors. So excited to hear from her. Jennifer Seepole, until recently was the CDO of Air New Zealand, has been a technical board advisor to the London Stock Exchange. She was global CIO of Kimberly-Clark in Texas, where I'm sure she's happy not to be now with the heat. And she's done executive programs with she's a lawyer and has done executive programs with Harvard Business School in cyber security. And also really pleased to have Ian Boyd, who completed our C-suite program last year in information technology. He's head of ICT for Anzac Foods, and really manages a large, he's been there for 6 years, and I know manages a large team from some of his LinkedIn posts and things that he's been doing with his team. So happy to have him. And Ellie Folds, who's an alum of the Leadership Mindset Program, and she is Global Innovation Manager for Fonterra, which is really an exciting title, and it sounds like a great job. We could probably do a whole webinar on her position and the kind of innovation that's taking place at Fonterra. So she's been with Fonterra for 9 years and been in this role for 2, and she has a BA in food nutrition from the University of Surrey in the UK. So really pleased to have all them. And then again, just to finish off, this is myself and Noah. We're happy for you to contact as we move along. But let me just stop sharing. Let's see. Oops. Show. Okay. And now I'd like to turn it over to Jennifer. And so what I'll do is start with our advisor group panelists and just have them introduce themselves, and then we have some questions. I'll throw it to them. And again, feel free to ask questions through the Q&A function as we're going through. So Jennifer, maybe you could just give an introduction of yourself. I gave a high level, but kind of what makes you tick, your passions, and a little bit about your background. And really, again, you've been, there's a lot of advisory board members, but we've worked together over the last 2 years a lot, and really great to know you.
Yep. Thanks so much, Dave. Well, for me, I have been an executive for a while, but I started out as an entrepreneur and in technology, and also did a lot of consulting with IBM, like you said, with the London Stock Exchange, and then also a global CIO sitting on the executive team and reporting quite frequently to boards for Honda Motor Company, Kimberly-Clark, as you said, USAA, a financial services company, and most recently Air New Zealand. And now I'm consulting again, and I get to spend a lot of time with great companies, helping them with their digital transformations. So what I bring to the table as part of this program, and where my passion is helping bring some real life experience and mentoring to a program where there's all these great methodologies and lessons that are being taught through the university, and sort of bringing them to life and answering questions on real life circumstances. Because how we think, how we influence, how we effectively lead and communicate changes so much in the C-suite. And what I've noticed over my career is that mid-level managers that come into that next step of their career, it's tough. They're not really understanding how that change happens. And even for myself, I had to teach myself. And so being able to spend time with them and answer questions and help give examples of different ways of thinking and success stories and lessons learned is really what this program's about. And so I've been doing this now with the university for a couple of years, and I've really found it gratifying to be part of this program and see the huge change in people as they go through the program over time.
Great, thanks, Jen. And let me go to Angela Dixon. Maybe Angela, you could just do the same, introduce yourself and a little bit about your background.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. Kia ora. So my background is somewhat traditional. I started my career in the corporate finance world of PwC, both here in New Zealand and then in London. And eventually I ended up spending 10 years in insurance. So I managed to work my way through up the slippery slope, or the slippery pole as they like to say it, and make my way up to executive roles. And I got my first CFO role at Public Trust, where I was the CFO and the CIO. And then I moved on to a CFO role at Synlait Milk. And I couldn't reinforce what Jennifer has just said enough. The skills needed at that next level are fundamentally quite different, and how you view them when you are middle management, when you're watching your executive peers, is quite different to when you're actually in it. So there's a huge amount of advantage to everyone who's listening to this call, who's considering this course, to consider conscious development of yourself to help you on that pathway. I think one of the other things that I'm really interested in is the fact that people are coming and watching this webinar. And if you're taking the time out to think about your career, and you're taking the time out of your day job to think about how to developing yourself, you're definitely on the right pathway to getting there, because once you're at the executive level, it's all about creating space to think. And that's really important if you're ever going to be strategic, if you're ever going to be able to have 2 feet in the future rather than 2 feet in the current, which is expected of you as an executive. Because if you don't do it, who is? The board don't do it all, trust me. And so it's really important that you are consciously thinking about how to spend your time. And especially now, because everyone's been through this crazy 2 years where everyone has been delivering and having to do a lot of additional work on top of their day jobs to get through the COVID realities for lots of businesses. So I hope most of you really get something out of this today and take the plunge into developing yourselves.
Great. Thanks, Angela. Maybe I'll stay with you for a second. So, you know, I started with the programs about two and a half years ago, and I've worked at a lot of universities. My background's in executive MBA programs, and I've really been impressed with the level and the really, and you know, of people we have on our advisor groups for these C-suite programs, and not just the names, but actually the positions, but actually the engagement that you all put into the programs through our through advisor group meetings that we have a couple times a year, as guest speakers, as mentors to our participants. And you know, I'm wondering, maybe you could talk a little bit about what you gained from doing this. And you were very busy, obviously, as in the CFO, and this all takes time. And I'm sure it's about giving back. But what other things do you gain from being involved with the programs? And I think that also relates to when people come into it, the type of things that they're gonna get out of it.
Yeah, Dave, I think the most important thing for me is just to stay relevant and stay connected. So you have that ability to meet other like-minded people who care about or are interested in the things that you are, and you keep broadening your network. So staying involved with things and giving back is really important. I also, you know, as other than just being involved with Auckland University here, I also am a big investor into startups for the same reason. It really opens doors to new things, new learning, and you meet a lot of different people. It stretches your thinking and it keeps you relevant. Because the biggest thing, I think, is not so much what you're delivering every day, it's just how you're staying relevant to the issues in the world, because most people can solve everything. Eventually, it is common sense. You've just got to stay open-minded to learning and have a joy of learning, which I do. So that's one of the reasons I'm really keen. And I've done quite a bit of mentoring in the past. I actually mentored 2 last year that have gone on to be their first CFO roles through different avenues. And I think it's just really important to keep connecting with people.
Terrific. And Jennifer, can I ask you the same thing? What have you gained? I remember when I first started, I sat on your presentation to the CIO group, and you were talking about moving into presenting to the board and the CIO, and you're at Air New Zealand, and I think that was maybe at the beginning of COVID, so there's a lot of challenges going on. But you know, what do you get? I guess I was going to say, when I heard you speak to the CIOs, I said this, you know, really is really relevant to everybody. I mean, to all the specializations. It really wasn't just for the CIOs. You're really talking about stuff that's, you know, very high level. And I think that's also why we've kind of transitioned to having people more together. But maybe you can talk a little bit about what you've gained from the programs over the years.
Yeah, you know, participating in this program, I would reiterate everything Angela said. It's about staying connected and staying relevant, and really importantly, helping people connect with other people. And so the cohort that comes in, not only are they close, but then they have the benefit of mentors who are already in different businesses, introducing them to other people in other companies. and just helping them to be successful. As a mentor, you almost feel obligated to look after the people in the cohort and just help them to be successful. And so Angela, myself, others that participate in this program from an executive level really take it to heart that we want to give back and help people. But to your point, what I love about the program is we talk about executive influence and thinking and how to be effective, but it's also interacting with the board. And when I get into these discussions and leading discussions with the team, I open it up for questions, and that's their big question. What does the board want from me, and how should I change, and what should I provide? And so these kinds of conversations, to Angela's point, if you can get this down now, then when you're in the role and you're faced with these situations, you just go, and you've already had this sort of knowledge to back you up and know that you're headed in the right direction. And so for me, it's not only about connecting people, but it's this learning that's getting you ready to be the great executive that you want to be. And I love being part of that and giving back to that.
Great. Jennifer, maybe you could talk, and I've heard you speak about this in different sessions, but very specifically about how, say, the leadership mindset, which is really focused on your understanding yourself, and as you move upward in organizations, it's really about managing people. I mean, and managing, strategy, but also, really probably the toughest thing is managing people. But maybe talk about specifically either how the leadership mindset program or the transition to C-suite program kind of gives you specific skills or what is necessary when you're moving into those levels, that people, kind of, they get in there and then they're surprised, or maybe they're not prepared for it.
Yeah. I think moving into that C-suite level, it's so different than managing. You're talking about leadership, and that is a change, a mind shift change that happens in those roles where it's not just about knowing what you're good at. Like I am typically a technology leader or CIO, and so that's accepted that I understand that. But really that emotional intelligence and that ability to lead your teams and connect with your partners on the executive team is really crucial. And so I think that understanding your leadership style and what works for you. I have a more inspirational leadership style, so I have a certain style that I like, but people have different styles, and learning your style and how to leverage that and effectively lead in a really productive way, I think is the key. And I think some of the most interesting discussions we get in this program are when you have CIOs, CFOs, supply chain, general management, they're all in a room together and understanding the value of each of those roles and how partnering together makes you a stronger leader. And so it's a brilliant way to spend time with people that are in a field that you may not be in and understand them better, understand what they need from you and what you need from them for future success.
Great. Thanks. Angela, I mean, a similar question, but also I see you had a background in sort of, I think in CFO, and you moved up, but also on the technology side as well. So maybe talk about that. I mean, specifically what the skills are you need, as Jennifer talked about, but then also maybe a little bit about how it is working with people from different, when you're a finance person and you're in middle management, you're dealing with mostly finance, but all of a sudden you're moving up to the senior level and you have to understand, much more about the organization.
Yeah, sure. I mean, one of the peculiarities about being in the CFO sector or area, I guess, is, you're dealing with you grow up in teams of some pretty bright people, and people that know numbers. When they see numbers, they don't see barcodes, they see accurate numbers and trends and insights. And so when you move into a more senior role, like a CFO or even a financial controller, but you're all of a sudden dealing with your peers who don't see numbers as easily as you do. And you really need to switch your role very quickly into coach. And how to make these people look good is now your job, not how to catch them out, how to make them feel like idiots because they can't see the numbers like you did in a meeting, how to prep them in advance. And ultimately, that all comes back down to relationships. The challenge with the CFO sector or area is you don't get a lot of experience while you're in the CFO learning the craft of being finance of how to do these things. So it is the one area, and this is why I'm quite passionate about leadership skills, especially within the CFO finance sector, is because I think, you know, we definitely need some help sometimes. We're not the charismatic corner of the organization. But when companies get into trouble, or when you go through rocky years, or your numbers aren't getting hit, or you've got overzealous growth expectations from your peers, you know, absolutely you need that charisma, that relationship ability to support them. Because in the end of the day, your job is in the CFO to be a, you know, really good CFO is to make everyone be successful and help them. And you become coach really quickly rather than coach to your peer and leaders. And then the other thing is, and this is what is particularly hard for lots of finance professionals, is you've got to leave the detail alone. You've got to know it. Trust me, you've got to know it. But you've got to trust your team to do the detail, and letting go of delivery and stepping above that, which can be one of the biggest shifts for people moving into C-suite. I liken it to those, you know, those mini series like The Devils and the Billions, you know, that you watch all the markets. Basically, if you're just not walking around all day with just your cell phone in your hand, you're probably in too much of the detail.
Right.
A bit tongue in cheek, but you know.
Yeah. No,
there's some reality to that.
absolutely. Yeah, and one of the things you mentioned about coaching, and one of the things we have embedded in the programs is peer coaching. We have Peter Blyde, who's one of, you know, really an outstanding facilitator, and he works with groups as you're going through the program. In addition to your mentoring, he works with you and teaches you the skills of peer coaching, which you take back to your organization and coach people as you move into senior management. So another thing that, you know, as I mentioned, I come from a executive MBA background, and what people come in, it's a tremendous amount of work when you're doing an executive MBA. And one of the things people find that maybe they hadn't thought about when they come into an MBA program is how valuable the network is, and learning from other people and meeting other people, and how you know, how just organically you learn about benchmarking and best practices, and people get hired through these ways. So I think this is really critical. Maybe Jen, you could talk a little bit about the network, your experience with the network on the advisor group and with participants, and how valuable it is, really, to, you know, if you've moved around to different countries and how to build new networks. And I think to be successful, this is, you know, really critical. You have to be a network, and I think sometimes in New Zealand, networking is sort of a dirty word or something, but it is, you know, especially in New Zealand, it is very important.
Yeah, really, I think it's everywhere. Going through programs like this, you make lifelong connections and friendships. And I've often actually thought to myself, I wonder if these people know how much I'm doing behind the scenes, connecting them, because I'll hear about something and I'll say, oh, this person would be great for that. And so I'll connect them to somebody or do something for them, and likewise for myself. So the relationships that we've developed along the way through this program, and how much I've learned from the cohort, from my peers, is lifelong. I mean, I have these connections now that I know that I'll have forever. And so I can't emphasize that enough. It's not just about connecting with people. It's about connecting with people that I think in your industry, or that are connected to your industry or other industries that interest you. And keeping that innovative mindset and spurring you on, and supporting you is really fantastic.
Great. Okay, good. So first, if anybody has, again, I see there's a couple questions coming through, but please feel free to continue asking questions in the Q&A, and we'll get to them. But I'd like now to, and thank you, Angela and Jennifer, and we'll certainly can come back to you and as we get into the panel discussion. But with limited time, I really want, and we could probably go another hour. I mean, it was great feedback, but maybe we'll move on to our alumni who have just gone through the program and get your thoughts. So Ian, great to see you down in I know you're down in Christchurch. How's the weather down there?
Yeah, it's a bit wet down here, Dave, unfortunately.
Okay, well, we've had a lot of rain up here in Auckland. Today is not a bad day, but I know you've had some tough times. But maybe Ian, you could just give I gave a high level introduction, but maybe talk about your background and what drew you into this program, the C-Suite program this past year.
Yeah, sure. So hi, everyone. Kia ora. I'm Ian Boyd. I'm the head of ICT for Ansco Foods. Ansco is a company that a lot of Kiwis or people in New Zealand haven't heard of, but we're actually New Zealand's 5th largest exporter. And we bring the world good health and nutrition through New Zealand's finest beef and lamb products, which we export to 84 countries throughout the world. I run the technology services for Ansco, so I have an internal team of 35 people who are responsible for everything from infrastructure and engineering through business intelligence and innovation through to plant automation and advanced robotics. My background is in the ICT function, so I started out down on the 0800 number for Apple for New Zealand, helping people with their computer problems. So I've worked right up from the entry level IT jobs right up now through to head of ICT.
Great, thanks. And let me go over to Ellie. If you're there. Great. Hey, Ellie. Yeah, so let me, and Ellie is an alum of the Leadership Mindset Program. And maybe you could you please introduce yourself and talk about maybe why you joined the program?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. So hi, I'm Ellie. I work at Fonterra. I'm a global innovation manager in our maternal and pediatric brand Anmum. Been at Fonterra about 9 years now, mainly in the global innovation space. But prior to that, innovation management roles in the UK, where I'm originally from. So I guess on a day-to-day basis, my role is to develop products, innovations, and strategy for our brand across about 10 different countries. So on a weekly basis, I'm probably linking into 10 different countries, 10 different teams, 10 different cultures, and really wanted to, I guess, the reason for going on the Leadership Mindset Program is really to understand different ways of leadership, both understanding myself, but also others, and really techniques on how to manage and kind of get through challenging situations, conflict, which I think, the course delivered for me. Yeah.
Fantastic. And Ian, maybe a bit about why you joined why you decided to seek out the program.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think working in technology has taught me if you're not constantly upskilling, you're going backwards at quite a great rate of knots. And I would say the same applies in terms of business these days. The change of pace that we have and, having to manage business through disruption like COVID has meant that it's really important to be on the cutting edge of what's happening. And certainly when I looked for programs that were available, I looked not just in New Zealand, but overseas as well. And the transitioning to C-Suite course really captured my attention in the sense that it wasn't purely theoretical. Through the course, there's access to a lot of great people, some of which you talked about before, Dave, who are experts in their own fields and either manage businesses directly themselves or they consult to other businesses on their subject matter. So I really enjoyed the fact that the course had not just a theoretical element to it, but also practical application.
Great, thanks. And Ellie, I think that the Leadership Mindset Program you know, that I think that the transitioning to the C-suite, it's you know, like a executive senior leadership program, strategic leadership. It's sort of easier to understand. The leadership mindset program is a little bit different. I know people are passionate about it. It's transformational. Maybe you could talk a little bit about what you gained, you know, and I know you had you were going through during COVID, so it was a little bit different. There wasn't as much. It was a little challenging for us and for participants. There wasn't as much in person as we would like to have had. But talking to people, it seems like people had a great experience. So maybe you could talk about a little what you gained going through.
Yeah, and absolutely. We started in August last year, just after we went into lockdown.
Yeah.
So I think rather than doing the course over, I think it was 3 months, it took us about 9 months to complete online. However, actually, I think it was quite a benefit in the long run in terms of building those relationships, practicing our skills outside the course. So from my perspective, actually, that worked really well. But in terms of, I guess, how I've changed, I think it's really from a personal level, it was quite thought-provoking in how I lead, but also myself as well. So I think, you know, I learned quite a lot about myself going through that journey. But from, I guess, from a job perspective, it really has helped me to step back more and really assess the situation when I, you know, come across a challenge. And it's also given me the confidence to not be afraid of reframing an issue as well, and adapting to actually achieve the best outcome. Yeah. Before the conflict, for the program, I didn't feel very comfortable with conflict either. So actually learning those techniques of how to heat and cool has really helped me in terms of my development, my leadership style as well.
Great, thanks. And Ian, you know, I'm amazed at all the speakers that we have coming through the program, our advisor group, but then others. And I think, you know, one thing that the lockdowns did help us in going into on virtual is we were able to bring in speakers from around the world online. So it allowed us to innovate as well. And that's why this year we've decided to do 2 of those sessions online because we think there's value to doing that. Well, it's important to be in person, but there's value to things we can do online that we couldn't do in person. But maybe, do you have any examples of specific sessions or speakers that really resonated with you, or that you or memorable, or that you've got things out of?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, all of the speakers in general were really good, and I got something out of each session from all of the speakers. And I think really nice to get a variety of speakers there too, not just in terms of their location, but also their backgrounds and their roles. And really interesting to hear different perspectives from other, you know, functional areas of the C-suite. But a few of them really stood out to me. So Peter Blyde, who you talked about before, and the peer coaching and the one-on-one coaching sessions that we did for me were really helpful, not just in the course, but also for my day-to-day work as well. So that's definitely something that I brought back to the organisation with me. But also Bridget Carroll, I really enjoyed her sessions on change and, you know, some of the different change frameworks that there are, because there's so much change happening in organizations at the moment, and being aware of, you know, how you get buy-in to change, how you freeze and unfreeze the organization and communicate that change out is really important.
Great. And, you know, Ian, we have you, so we've had about, I think, close to 300 people have gone through the C-suite program. And many, I think it's even more, that have gone through the leadership mindset over the years. And we've created LinkedIn groups to help people start staying in touch with people that have gone through the program. Ian, do you have any examples of the network or people, you know, you finished the program, I don't know, it's probably 7 months ago now or more. Have you stayed in touch, or have you developed any networks from alumni from the past, or anything like that?
Yeah, the program's great for that, Dave. And, you know, one of the things I really enjoyed is that you get to spend time in your individual cohort. So you get to know the people in your functional area very well, which is really handy for when you need to phone a friend to ask that tricky question, but also getting to know the people in the other streams as well. And I've kept up with several of my cohort, you know, post the event. And actually in September, I'm going to visit some of them while I'm up in Palmerston North for business. A couple of my cohort were from Palmerston North, so we're going to catch up in person while I'm there.
Right. Great. Thanks. And, you know, Ellie, I'm curious. So your program is online for the first, you know, most of the sessions, and then you guys all came together in person a few months ago. How was that experience? I mean, did you feel like you can get to know people pretty well online, or did it really take getting together in person to build those relationships?
No, I think we built that relationship online. As I said, we were, you know, I think the course went over 9 months or 10 months. So, you know, we did actually build those relationships online. However, when we did get together after the course, we all came together as a special one-off to, you know, meet each other. It was quite surreal, I have to say. There was often people on the camera don't quite look the same on person. However, it was really lovely actually to all get together and meet each other face to face. And, you know, going forward, you know, we do keep in contact, you know, via social media, but also beer catch-ups at the pub. So something that we couldn't do throughout the process of the program.
Right.
Yeah.
Terrific. So now I'll just, again, we have a couple questions that have come in. If you have questions, please submit them to the audience. Please submit them on the Q&A function, and we can answer them now. And I'll ask to Jennifer and Angela if they want to join back, and we can just have a general discussion for the remainder of the time and answer questions. There is one question, and I'll throw this to Jennifer as an American like myself, who's here, has now living here and has residency here. So, you know, Jennifer, this person's asking, do you think the courses relevant for those transitioning? Well, actually, is this a U.S. methodology or Kiwi methodology leadership? I mean, is there? You would have a better, having worked in senior management both in the U.S. and in New Zealand. What do you think?
I think that the New Zealand culture is really strong. And I think that I personally can't emphasize that enough. I think it really is important to remember that. And I think the course does a really good job of facing that, as far as bringing up the differences between different cultures and talking about what works and what doesn't. From my perspective, I worked at Honda Motor Company for 7 years. And so understanding the Japanese culture and how that had an impact on leadership is also a great life lesson. And actually similar to a Kiwi culture. And so I think those kinds of conversations are had throughout the program, and it makes it even more interesting, actually, as you're going through it, to understand what those differences are and what can help you to be successful.
Great. So, Angela, I'm wondering, having done the Darden program, and you know, you've obviously worked with internationally. How do you feel about that? Is there a, you know, and I think one thing I would say is, having worked in global executive programs, where you build, you know, a lot of the programs I work for, you build a global network. This is more people that are based in New Zealand and Auckland, across New Zealand, though they're from other countries that are living here. But I think you build a great New Zealand network coming through. But Angela, what do you think about, as far as learnings that was different at Darden to what we're learning here?
I think there's a really strong focus on the soft skills in this course and very practical, which is very much a Kiwi culture, and it is really important. I think the other thing that's really different compared to my 8 years of being in England, in London, working, is you're a bit more anonymous in an international larger market, right? And whereas in New Zealand, you bring your brand with you everywhere you go because someone will know someone who knows you. So it's really important in the New Zealand leadership context to be really authentic, because you can't pretend to be who you're not, because someone's going to find you out in New Zealand, or someone's going to show up somewhere on a board or in another team that's actually knows someone that's worked with you before. So I think knowing and developing your authentic, true leadership is really critical. I think in some of the bigger cities, you can get away with being different people for different times, if you know what I mean. So I definitely think, but I think we're an international world, right? And so I think leadership transponds a lot of those different cultures. The key to a lot of leadership at the moment is diversity and inclusiveness anyway. So it's got to capture how to deal with different people, because it's not just diversity of different ethnic groups or gender, it's diversity of age. Managing different people from different age cohorts is extremely difficult and different compared to just managing people like yourself. So all of that is like a melting pot, really. So I think you cover it pretty well in this course.
Great. I'll just I'll just ask Felicity and Philippa, who are also on the call. So we have, so basically with our executive and professional development, we have a business development team, and we have a programs team that manages the programs as you come in. So maybe I'll ask Felicity, who's joining the call, who is designing has been designing the programs for many years. Maybe you could talk a little bit about just your thoughts on what people thinking about coming into this program this year, how it might be a little bit different from previous years, and what they can expect and what you're planning.
Certainly. Thanks, Dave. We have been focused over the last few years in actually bringing the cohorts together so that we get a very big focus on that shift between functional leadership to executive leadership, as everybody's been speaking about. And it is in the context of Te Ao Māori. So, we are in Aotearoa. We do take that into account. And of course, we start off with a mihi whakatau, so that's going to be exciting. And we weave sort of tikanga through it, so the program, which is a particular sort of focus for this year as well. But for this year, the program is slightly shorter than the programs previously, partly because we just having to deal with COVID and various different versions of the variations on that theme. We decided, okay, we'll start it later in the year, and we'll put a big focus on the cohorts coming together for at least 3 of the programs, and then the 2 online parts of the program, online modules, will be very much focused on specializations. So we'll have, people talking about that leadership shift, and you'll explore it from those different lenses, CFO, CEO, CIO, supply chain, and people. And the people one, I see there's a question there about, what's a people leader in the exec team who is actually really focused on sort of culture and people. Is yes, the GM people program is broader than an HR program. It's about general managers. It's about people who actually have to lead people. And so that's a really great and slightly different from what we've done before. But really, there's all of the speakers will be focused in the 3 modules that are face-to-face on what is that shift? How does that look from those different kinds of perspectives? So I think, and the mentoring we're actually doing is a sort of group mentoring. We're having peer coaching, but the mentoring is not necessarily one-on-one. It's partly because the program's a bit shorter, but we'll have a group working with an expert group member, and that will work. That's an exciting proposition because you get to hear various different people in that space too.
Great, thanks. And Phil, so Philippa Collins, I said her naming because I call her Phil, so we said her name wrong earlier. Phil, so you've been working with the Leadership Mindset program for a long time, as it's changed, and certainly over the last year with the challenges going online. So we really have a group of people. The program is starting in just a few weeks. There's still opportunity for people to join at this point, but those should move quickly. So maybe you could just talk a little bit about what people that have already registered or they're planning to join now, what they can expect coming into the program and what they should be thinking about as they plan, and from your perspective, and you've done the program, what you've gotten out of it.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think everyone who comes to the program gets something different out of it. It's a really sort of unique journey for people. And I think the crux of it is that a lot of people that come to the Leadership Mindset program tend to be technical experts. They tend to have worked their way into positions because of their technical expertise. And then, as many others have discussed, they find themselves suddenly needing to draw on some different sets of skills or tools to deal with different types of challenges, and that often takes them out of their technical area of expertise, and therefore they potentially lack the confidence or the know-how to address these things. And I think that the world is changing so fast that the more traditional sort of notions of leadership aren't necessarily serving us as well. So it's really about stopping and thinking about what leadership do we need for the future, what leadership will respond best to this complex and changing world we're living in. And I think this program really helps people to firstly stop, as I think Ali alluded to, just pausing rather than jumping to solution mode and thinking, okay, what is this problem? How do we best approach it? What are some other frames on this problem? What are other perspectives and assumptions that we need to surface? And in doing that, you get a much richer and deeper understanding of what you're tackling. And then we really help to build those sort of practices that help you be effective when you're working in that space where you really don't know the solution and you can't see the pathway forward. And I think that's what a lot of people, when they talk about the value of the program, it's around having the confidence to play in that space of uncertainty and really sort of get to new territory through the skills they develop.
Great, thanks a lot. Elliot, do you have any comment on what Phil just said? How does that resonate with you when you went through?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think day to day now, if I look back at what I've learned, I do stop more and I reflect more. So if I've got often in my job, I work in situations, quite complex projects with many different cultures involved and intricacies, and actually there have been a few instances actually since the program finished where I have actually stopped, reflected, and actually just reframed what the challenge is. And actually that actually does help in terms of sometimes the outcome. You end up with a much better outcome than say what I would have done prior to the program starting. So I think definitely it has changed my leadership style and those ways of working. Yeah, absolutely.
Great, thanks. And we just have a few more minutes left. I'll just go around, and so a lot of people that are on the call now are, they're thinking about doing the program. They're maybe talking to their leadership management about getting sponsorship for the program. So there are fees and to doing a program like this. But maybe I can just go around, and as we close out, to give some final advice. And then as you are all leaders, if somebody's coming to you and wants to do a program like this, what is the best pitch? How should they talk about it? A lot of companies are short on funding now, on doing these kind of things. But is it worth coming even if they're not sure they're going to get the funding? Is that good? So maybe just reflect, and we'll finish off with that last question. So Jen, I'll go to you. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry, I
There
hate
you
it
go.
when I
That's
do that.
okay. Yeah.
I think that in today's day and age, especially with the job shortage and the employees that are missing out in New Zealand right now, having really strong leadership is more critical now than ever. And so I think that making and investing in talent internally is so key, and giving support to the teams that are working so hard right now. And so I would take it from the perspective of wanting to be a stronger leader, wanting to grow and bring more to the table over time, and the passion just to contribute to the company, and the fact that this program would do that.
Great. Thanks. And Angela, from a finance perspective, when people come to you, you're looking at the money and budgets, and people want to develop yourselves. How do you sort of look at that? And this could be, companies have a certain amount that they're spending on individuals, and this might be more that you're contributing. It might need to be spread over a couple of years. It's for high performers, but how do you look at that?
I just think you've got to lean in and ask. The squeaky wheel gets oiled, and I think the money's pretty irrelevant when the budget holders, they'll be looking at how are they going to get the next level extension out of you? Where is your career path going? And if they're not thinking about that and not actively talking to you about that now, especially in the current market, it's probably a really interesting flag for you to consider. I wouldn't be worried about money at all. When it comes down to it, companies always pay if they want to, and they want to keep you. And the reality is, for all of you doing this course, you're going to have to do it on the side of your desk to an extent anyway, because the market's tight. So that's what you're giving. You're giving over and above. You're saying you're prepared to do this over and above, your day job as well. So that counts for a lot. So back yourself and lean in.
Lean in. Good. And Ellie, so you came through last year, and you just went through this how did you go? Were you nominated? Did you approach your management? What was your approach?
Yeah, so I was lucky in a sense by Fonterra actually for supporting me in this. I was looking at leadership programs for a while, and actually I searched many different options. And when I came across the leadership mindset program, it really resonated with me, but also with what I do as a job and how actually it would benefit the company as well by sending me on it. So, and actually, they were very, I didn't have to argue at all. I was, big tick, I was sent on the course. And actually so were a few of my colleagues as well, actually, which Philippa is aware of. So, Fonterra bought into it, absolutely. And I think they can see the benefit now, having, sent us, a few of us on that course. So, yeah.
Great. And Ian, you will have the final word. How do you're managing a big team, and I can see from a lot of the things you're doing, you're really supportive of your staff. How do you feel when people are coming forward and want to do these kind of things, and how do you make decisions like this?
Yeah, well, to give people some perspective, when I went to see my manager about attending the course, I wasn't just asking for the money to attend the course, but also the flights and accommodation to come to Auckland to participate in the course as well. And I can guarantee everyone that conversation will not be as scary as you think it will be. And in fact, with my manager, the answer was a pretty quick yes. So your organisation will definitely get more value out of you attending the program than the financial expense of you being there. And I think I'd really encourage people who are thinking about attending as well. You do have your day job happening in the background, but if the more that you put into the course, the more you'll get back out of it. So if you can block out some time to make sure that people aren't trying to contact you when you're in the middle of learning, that was really helpful for me too.
Great. Thanks, Ian. That was some good words to close out. So we've hit the exact time. I'd like to thank so much to our panel, to Angela and Jennifer and Ian and Ellie. Thank you so much for giving your time today. and in this, and also supporting us in other things. So thank you so much. Great to see you. And also to Rachel, who joined earlier, and Felicity and Phil for coming on. And so again, the applications are closing. They're starting soon. If you are interested, please reach out to us. I'll send a follow-up. I'll send a replay of this session you can watch, as well as the individual sessions, but happy to have individual conversations with myself, with my colleague Noah, with Phil or Felicity as well. So we're here for you and look forward to work with you. So have a great rest of your day, and thank you to all of you who joined us today, and I hope that you got something out of the session. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.